We've spent 2 years getting information from the community about aspirations, desires. The staff have already hired consultants who've come up with a very, preliminary concept about proposed elements. And
I think it was made clear at our briefing the other day that we had to go out twice.
No. Well, I mean, we can look at that. But what I want to understand is that, because my understanding is that the scope has to come back to council for a decision. So you come back with a recommendation on initial scope.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is the board's about to go up for consultation, and the advice that we've had, based on some legal advice that we haven't seen, is that we have to go out and consult on the proposed various options for sites. Once that's finished, then we go out again with the proposed concept that we're putting into the facility. All I'm trying to...
But the initial concept comes back to council for a decision.
No, the board was given the delegated authority to consult and engage on the initial scope and the proposed sites.
I think you need to wait for the advice and not make a decision here. It may be that the scope depends on the site.
Well... Yeah, it just seems contrary to how we do things like Napunawai, where we just come up with one consultation document, and given that we've spent 2 years asking a lot of these questions to the community, but anyway.
So you've asked for some legal advice. I think it's important that you wait and receive that.
Well, can we make sure that there is a process by which the council can, if necessary, make a decision, such that the consultation the community board go out for includes the basic scope and the site? Because it seems to me they've done massive consultation already, that we're prolonging a process where the community don't want it prolonged. So can we at least have that advice back through to the council, so that if we need to make a decision, so they can go out and do one consultation, so you don't get people getting bored and restless by over consultation, that we can do that?
I think that the kind of frustration for me and kind of observing what's gone on in this particular instance is that in order to do the consultation on the site, you need to have a really good understanding of the challenges that each of the sites might present, and what the benefits of them are. And until you know that, it'll end up, You've got to know what you're working with first before you design what you've got. But
I totally agree, except that they are in the fortunate position of having a site that works and having a site that they will agree on. And if the community...
That's a predetermined position, which is a rather risky thing to say.
If the community don't agree on that, then obviously they have to go back and restart. But if the community do agree with it, why couldn't they, while they're talking to them at community groups and things, actually talk to them about what type of pool it involves as well? Because obviously there's a budget that constrains what they're able to do.
And all I'm saying...
Excuse me, Leanne, can I...
Yep.
Can I respond?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The board was informed on Monday that the consultation process that we're going out to do will be about the site and around that initial sort of what are the elements that need to form part of this hub. So we're not just going out on site selection, and the board has been informed of that. The first consultation we're going out with in February will include the site and the stuff that involves the concept that will lead to a concept.
We're just receiving the report at the moment, so we will ask for a copy.
What we just got told by 2 community board members, that they would have to do 2 consultations.
So there are 2 consultation rounds, because the first one, at the moment, what the board is working with is bulk and location. We haven't gone to the community. We've gone to the community in the past, and they've told us these are the different elements that we would like to see within our community. We've now gone back. We're now saying to the community, where should a Linwood Woolston pool be placed, and are these the right sort of things that you said you wanted? So basically, dry facilities, wet facilities for children, and then after that, we have to go for a second consultation, and this is where staff are looking at who makes the final decision, whether it comes back to the council as a
is that the detailed design?
That's the issue of can the board sign off the concept design, or does the concept and detailed design have to come back to the council? So there are going to be 2 rounds of consultation.
Yeah. Well, there were 2 rounds of a consultation at QE2, so I mean, it's you have to go back with the design once you've got the site.
We didn't do that for Numbrand, which I've sent around and showed you.
We did that for QE2, which is another community facility. It had other money attached to it. Anyway, look, we're only receiving the report. I'm quite happy that that we have a look at the advice that is going back to the community board, and see whether we can shorten processes if possible. So, would someone like to move that the community board report be received? Yanni, Sarah, put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. Now I'd like to invite Stuart Bald and Dennis Aldridge from the Allendale Reserve Management Committee to come forward. Thank you very much for your understanding, enabling our chair of the other community board to leave. Thank you.
No problem. I'll read out our submission just to get it done quickly. This is about the Allendale Hall repairs at the bottom of the Lytton Harbour Basin. It's a pretty early part of the settlement. It was pretty much settled in the late 1840s, early 1850s. The Allendale Hall quake repair has been a CCC work in progress for some time, and it's now nearly complete. The result has been to bring this 120-year-old facility into the 21st century and to give it a new lease of life. Community and this committee thank the City and Banks Peninsula Community Board for making this possible. There are generations of local residents who appreciate the work that's been done and look forward to good and social times at the reserve again. The first point to make is the Allendale Reserve Management Committee support the Banks Peninsula Community Board's recommendations that the Council allocate the full annual rental of the reserve transport yard to the Banks Peninsula Community Board to enable them to allocate funding to this reserve at the discretion of the Community Board. Now, for many years, the rental of the transport yard has provided the only income for the Reserve Management Committee to build and develop and expand and maintain and operate the entire reserve. This has been a successful long-term venture. It has provided a large capacity venue for community operated events. Use of this reserve has produced funding streams for other community organisations, for example the Chumley Home and the Governor's Bay Community Association and other community groups. Typical events held here are multi-sports. We ran a triathlon here for 17 years. Football, cricket, fairs, golden oldies, large community meetings, private celebrations. Large community meetings have difficulty in finding venues with parking and seating capacity, and this is a 300-metre hall that does all that for us and has done for years. Casual use in the reserve include outdoor party events, dog exercise, golf practice, horse riding, touch rugby and shoreline birdwatching. Since the 2010 quakes, the reserve has had no income at all and the grounds have seriously deteriorated. Our committee has a list on the back of our submission here of pressing jobs on the agenda to bring this facility into a good state of repair and maintenance. There are significant groundworks to deal with and also additional building work to finish. And this will take a number of years to complete and a lot of funding. The second point that we'd like to make is the Reserve Committee has a contrary view to staff recommendation that a one-year allocation of these rental incomes from the reserve transport yard will have a significant impact on our operational recovery. Our job list has an estimated DIY cost set against it, just to give you a bit of scale. With present-day health and safety constraints of work practice, these sums will not remotely be sufficient to contract out the works. Presently, there's no alternative funding scheme proposed for Peninsula Reserve Management Committees, and that clearly presents a difficulty for some time yet. This hall was built in 1896 on 6 acres of Crown land that was used to be the police residence and station and a jail. From 1882 to date, there has been transport-related activity on this land. A 10-seat horse-drawn coach and Royal Mail service operated to Littleton and to Charteris Bay out of this location from 1882 until the 1920s. A cartage business using Model T 1-tonne trucks used to operate until 1927. This area produced potatoes, tomatoes, carrots and fruit for the city market. Produce was also transported by bullock and horse-drawn carts over Dyers Pass, and the road was sealed in 1957. Governor's Bay Transport and Banks Peninsula Transport were the last general cartage operators and operated from this reserve transport yard for more than 50 years. We submit that for volunteer reserve management committees to operate effectively, they need ready cash access on a day-to-day basis, and we'd like to point out how difficult it is to organise significant general works and repairs on uncertain and intermittent cash flows. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? Phil?
I just wondered, does the hall have any heritage status, especially given when it was built?
Not formal as far as I know. It is a place where return service people have been recognised and received and honoured. That's about it. It's just a very, very old. It's an area that settled out in the land was bought in 1876 and the police station was built in 1877 and it ceased its operation in 1880. So it's a waypoint for travellers to Akaraa and the outer bays. There was a tenuous route to Hilltop across the tops.
Thank you.
Goes back.
Are there any other questions? Sarah?
Just quickly, with the work that's being planned at the moment, the funds that are proposed to come, the Community Board's recommendation says that potentially they could take some of those funds and give them to another Reserve Management Committee. Are you needing all of those funds at the moment?
We would need all of those funds for quite a few years, and there is some resistance to, from our part, that it's diluted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Sue.
I just, Stewie's mentioned quite a bit about the history, but I would like to make the point that actually we see a tremendous future for this domain, not just for Allendale, Governor's Bay, but the peninsula, the city as well. Actually, we have the potential to be one of the jewels in the crown of the peninsula. If you look at reserves like the Little River one, this is not just the hall. And actually, I would encourage members, if you're going over that way, have a look at the hall. What's happened? This is it's a tremendous facility now, but it has a domain as well. And sports and all those kind of things, the two working together. There's a equine group that are trying to resurrect the equine area at the back. We're linked to the reserve and the foreshore walk and all that, round to the jetty. Now the jetty is in a partnership with the council, and we could see the same here through these kinds of funds as well. It's not just for our area. It's 20 minutes from Christchurch, and has the potential for, in the past, but we see into the future, to be able to come over there, use the hall, use the domains for the Samoan Church or whoever else, all these sort of groups. The vintage car people have come there, and so we have a very active and quite energetic committee at the moment, but we just need some assistance to actually try and make this work.
Yeah, Andrew.
If the Community Board recommendation was not adopted by Council today and the income from the reserve was not able to be applied to the Reserve Management Committee, and clearly the valuable work that the community is doing on that reserve through the Reserve Management Committee, what would the effect of that be? What would happen on the ground as a result of that decision?
Well, there's a number of things. For one, there's been considerable expenditure on the hall right now, but the wider reserve, there's an enormous amount of work to do, and we just don't quite know how it's going to take place, actually. You get constrained to the fact that to the place that you can't do a lot. And so what potentially could be something great actually won't be. And there's whole areas of drainage and all those kinds of things that the field doesn't work now like it used to. It used to be the home of kind of cricket, the Diamond Harbour Rugby Club for years, many years. That was the training ground because many of the players came from the city, and so it was the halfway point. You couldn't play rugby on it, you couldn't play cricket on it, you couldn't do anything on it now. The horse people there's a very strong delegation just come to us in this last week of equine people wanting to resurrect that whole thing at the back, but it needs an enormous amount of drainage and kind of ground formation, all that sort of stuff. We probably won't actually achieve them. So, as Stuart said, it's laid in a barn since the earthquakes. It's fallen into disrepair, but we see the potential of what could be, but it won't happen unless we get the support.
Practical immediate effect of that would be, it would be difficult to keep people engaged in the management committee, because unless there is some personal feedback coming back about achieving things, you won't find volunteer people who are prepared to spend that much time under adverse circumstances. It would be handed back to the city, I'm sure.
That's brilliant. Look, thank you very much for your presentation. And on that note, can I invite Pam Richardson to come forward for the Banks Peninsula Community Board? And could we begin with the Allendale Transport Yard site? So rather than dealing with your report first, if we could move to your Part A report item number 7, Allendale Transport Yard site.
So could, yes, very happy to do that, but want to remind the Council of what the Reserve Management Committee, just very briefly about what the Reserve Management Committees are. There are 15 of them across the peninsula. Allendale is just one of them. Robinson's Bay, the other issue that we've got in our report this morning, or it's got a good outcome. So they all have issues around. They don't actually get any funding to support them to do some of their work. Some of them do. A number of them do, like the Cairns Bay Camping Ground, the Devotionals Camping Ground, the Pigeon Bay Camping Ground. And there are others that receive a little bit of funding. Awiti receives a little bit of funding as well that help those reserve management committees do their work. So though the reserve management committees enable communities to make decisions about their own local reserves, by having direct input, and Stuart and Dennis actually talked about that. If people are interested in doing things, so they have to have a little bit of money so they can do things. But they are ultimately accountable to the council, or to the community board and to the council. They're all different, and some of them have several parcels of land. But at the moment, we're actually going through a program of reviewing the policies and developing that. It is taking some time. These reserve management committees are very old. They go back to, before perhaps Banks Peninsula District Council days, earlier district councils that were involved in those reserve areas. So we are working in a new, looking at coming up with some new guidance for reserve management committees. So just moving on to the Part A around that reserve area.
Right. So Andrew, would you like to move the recommendation of the community board, which is the one that we have in front of us there? Do I have a seconder for that? Yep. Rab? Any questions or discussion? Yep.
To check, two things. One is I was concerned that money from here could go to the other reserve management committees, so don't know how you want to deal with that. And the second question I had was, in the report there's quite a lot of talk about they can't have existing use rights. Is Fulton Hogan proposing to do something quite significantly different, or is it, I was just trying to understand if there's any concern over what could possibly go there?
No, I'm not aware of anything, but Andrew, are you aware of anything? Joan?
No,
existing use rights are really hard to obtain, and so the council decided that they couldn't work out the number of traffic movements.
Yeah, that's what the report's very clear about that.
Yeah, so therefore existing use rights could not be done. But Fulton Hogan will be doing, it's a yard where they've got tractors and trucks and stuff. It's the same use as was before, but the responsibility is on them if it turns out that they have to get a consent.
Right, but there'll be protections built in around the scale of activity that could happen if we lease it to them.
I am unclear about that, but I would assume there would have to be.
Okay.
On a positive note, Pam, this council has been saying that we want our communities to take over the areas and take responsibility for them. In the Banks Peninsula area, that's probably more prevalent than a lot of other areas. Would you say that allowing this community, this reserves group, to have this income to put back into this and be left alone to do what they can do for their community and be of value to the wider city?
Look, I'm totally in favour of that. We're working on resilience and sustainability for our communities, and this is part of it. So they need to be part of, allowed to make those decisions and have a little bit of funding to help them move forward.
So if this funding was decided to not go to them and go into the big pool, the odds are that, as these gentlemen said, that there'd be the moral of this group would go down, the morale, of this group would go down, and also the only other funding they could go for is back to council, so it would go back into a bureaucratic process which takes so much time and energy and loses a lot of money in that process. So it's better to leave them alone. They know what they're doing.
Not leave them alone.
No,
we'll all work alongside them to make sure we all get the best outcomes for our community and for the community board and the council. It is achievable, and as I said, we are developing new policy to go around these, so that all the reserve management committees are working on a similar sort of footing.
So their vision for this particular area fits in with, say, the Governor's Bay with regards to the walk that goes through from the pier?
It will eventually.
And okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, Phil.
Thanks, Pam. Actually, that was sort of my question, really, because you've got the Governor's Bay Wharf, if I recall, and then there's a track around which goes pretty close to Allendale, and it's a cycling walking track. I'm just wondering, how can perhaps we as a council support the links to the hall, perhaps through our parks? That's one question, because it's a popular walking track.
Yeah, there are a number of there's the head-to-head walkway that goes through there as well, but with this particular Reserve Management Committee will have a reserve management plan that will be drawn up with them and with the community. Right. So all of those things can actually be brought into it.
And thanks, Pam. The other part too we're clearly interested in is the strong history and historical aspect of the building and the area. So and if there's a way for us as council in terms of funding to have some historic link, for this area. So in fact,
yes, no, it's a vital area, and I see that you have got the booklet, head to the head of the harbour upstairs. Have a look at that, and that will be in that. So it is a very important, and of course we've got Living Springs just adjacent to that area as well. So which is used by a lot of young, all sorts of groups go to Living Springs to rejuvenate themselves, do all sorts of things. So it's great that we've actually got a good hall down there as well, and a reserve area that can also be considered.
Mike?
Thanks, Pam. I support the money going back to the Reserve Management Committee. But Yanni asked a question, I'm not too sure if it was actually answered, about your last part of your recommendation for 3 about actually being potentially partially allocated to other Reserve Management Committees. What's the rationale behind that? Because obviously that could dilute the money going to the people that are actually paying it to start.
Well, as I said, it's part of reviewing and developing the new policy going forward. It's just a suggestion. It needs to be worked through, and developing that new policy, it will be worked through with the community to, with that particular community to achieve that. So it's not in black and white at the moment, but it may be a consideration down the track. But it's interesting
because obviously it's not a massive amount of of money, and you've got a very, very big community board area, and it could get spread right across, and actually, you know, when you're that small to start with, it starts to just become crumbs, and it doesn't really achieve what probably is needed at the with this committee.
Andrew, have you got any comments?
Well, given that the review is going to come back to council for a decision, ultimately, isn't it?
Well, it'll come back to the community board, we'll make the review.
But won't the review then be reported through to us for a decision?
It will ultimately be,
well, why don't we just take out all the words after reserve, so that it's or, so take out or partially allocated to other reserve management committees at the discretion of the community board. Just in the meantime, because I mean, if this has really been put in there as a holding position because of the review, why not make that commitment now? The community know exactly what, well, the committee knows exactly what they can now expect, and then, you know, then they know that they're going to be getting $14,500.
Yeah, be very happy with that.
Yep. Sorry, just a question. Do we know how long the lease with Fulton Hogan is? It may be in the report. I haven't been able to find it, but well, because I mean, I was just, from what we heard from the deputation, I mean, my preference would be to give them the income stream for 3 years, or, you know, however long. I mean, I know the review's going on, but, you know, I just take on board the comments that were made. It's hard for them to plan when we're expecting all this work to be done with these volunteer reserve committees on a year-to-year basis. It would be much better, I personally think, if we could give them, you know, a bit more time than that. But it is weird that we're being asked to approve a lease with no time frame that I can find in the resolution.
Andrew?
Yeah, the original staff recommendation had a recommendation that we approve the funding from the lease for a year. So regardless of the length of the lease, the original staff recommendation was that we approve the funding go to the Reserve Management Committee for a year. The reason the Community Board didn't take that was because there's no guarantee that the policy review will be completed within the year, so we didn't want to be back here making the same decision again, or the Community Board having the same debate again, just to extend the holding pattern, essentially. I think we need to be confident that the review will take into account the provisions of reserve management plans, the funding needs of the reserve management committees, respect the volunteer capability and all the work that's done. The reason we didn't want a specific timeline, whether that was 1 year or 3 years or what it might be, is because we need that policy review to take place and to be effective and to be able to be implemented. So we don't want any impediments in the way when we get to that point. And I think we need to be confident that the review and its recommendations and the Community Board decision making around that afterwards will take into account the needs of the reserve management committees and the work that they do. The reserve management committees are subcommittees of the Community Board. So, you know, the Community Board is intimately involved with what they do. There's a liaison person on each of the reserve management committees, including Allendale. I can't imagine the Community Board would be approving a policy position or any changes that that changed the outcomes.
How long is the lease for? That's a really simple question. Like, I just don't think it's good practice for us to agree to a lease without knowing the time frame.
How long the lease is for? It should say.
Just in some.
We had
Okay.
expected that Bruce Rendell was here, but he doesn't seem to have.
Sorry?
Bruce Rendell was to be here to provide advice.
Yeah, he's on his way. He's out of the building at the moment. You want to hold that matter open until we get that advice? Yeah.
I don't see why we need a time frame. We can always address it through another resolution later. So I don't think that's sidetracking things personally.
If I may, usually truck and trailer that you have the time frame with the lease.
There was an earlier paper. This is the second paper, and I'm just not convinced that we weren't told what it was in the first paper, because I.
Mr. said that the staff will be back soon, so we could hold this until they come back and
Yes, I know, but it's just a bit of a shame. Anyway, we'll just pop it on hold at the moment. We'll just come back to it in a minute. So if you'd like to turn to your report, Pam.
Right, have we got my slide presentation? Well, Akaroa, or Banks Peninsula, has had a wonderful summer. I'm just absolutely amazed at the number of locals that you actually see. Locals, people living in the bays, actually down swimming this year. It's been amazing. They've all welcomed the high tides, even at Pigeon Bay. We've seen a little bit of surfing on the, with kids surfing on the tide. It's been great. Freedom camping continues to be an issue with our Banks Peninsula community. I'm delighted to see that we have some meetings organised and that moving forward to resolve those issues. We have a very vigilant community. The cruise ships have gone reasonably well. There will be issues that we're addressing with a number of groups and things, but life seems to be pretty comfortable in Banks Peninsula. We're enjoying the fine weather, and we look forward to what might happen over the next few days. Perhaps civil defence might be required, but anyway, we'll all be ready to go because Civil Defence Group meet regularly. So I just want to talk about a couple of things, good things that are going on. And social housing in Akaroa is it's an exciting development that's underway. We're replacing these old units, which are in very poor repair, on quite a large section, with 5 new ones. We've been a long time waiting. And for Akaroa, having some social housing, we've got a rest home, we've got an integrated family health centre, we've got a whole lot of things, social housing as well. So it means that our community is fairly well sustainable, resilient, and how a small rural community should be operating. So we're delighted to see that moving forward, and that will be happening shortly. So just I'd like to say in relation to that the new integrated family health centre that's being built with the District Health Board is the first sods in the ground are being turned on the 24th of February. So there will be there will be invitations for anyone that's interested in coming along and joining us on the old hospital site. But it's exciting for us in Akaroa to see that these projects are all coming together. So the next one is about another Reserve Management Committee, and this Reserve Management Committee also, they had a bit of funding allocated from the City Council for a boardwalk and a car park. It has just been completed. It's absolutely delighted. Well, the Reserve Management Committee is delighted, but the community is delighted too. A great spot, and you should all be going to have a look at it. It's just off the main highway. And it's got some interpretation boards on it. It's all good stuff, so it's wonderful. The next one is about the Rod Donald Trust. Now you should all know about the Rod Donald Trust and its focus on Banks Peninsula walks, that you will have all had information. It is a council-controlled organisation, so you should know all about it. And Andrew is a trustee of that organisation. But this is about them, the Rod Donald Trust, working with the board to look at how we can actually support them and what they're doing going forward. It provides, there's no doubling up on where the walking tracks might be or whatever it is. It's actually working together in harmony in a collaboration to complete a number of the walks. And you can see a number of the ones that they're working with, they're part of City Council ones as well. So it's we're looking at working with them. And then also included in there, we've put the we have their strategic goals should be in there somewhere, but perhaps we might have missed that off. That we did actually include in our little overheads about that. But we do welcome the opportunity of working with the Rod Donald Trust. We did have the Rod Donald Trust strategic goals included in the last bit, but it's obviously dropped out. So then we move on to the next one. Next one? We've resolved the Allendale Reserve. I think we've lost the picture up the top. Anyway, it's all about our two Part A issues. We've done the Allendale Reserve. The other one is the International Maritime Labour Convention. And the board is looking for a way to move forward, a path to resolving these issues. So you've got the paper in front of you, and Andrew, would you take us through this? We've got the paper and the recommendations on it.
So we're dealing with this Part A now? Yep.
Yes. Is that right?
Before we get to the Part A,
right.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, sorry. Right.
But look, I'm just rereading some of the recommendations. But carry on if you can introduce it.
So Pam, you're happy for me to speak to
Yes,
this
I'm very
one?
happy for you to introduce it. I'm standing in for Christine today, and of course it's in Littleton, so a Littleton focus.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. So just some background information really for councillors. The Littleton Seafarers Centre is a voluntary organisation. It's based on Norwich Quay in Littleton, currently sited in a building which is on land which has been made available by independent providoring, independent fisheries, and it provides services to seafarers, welfare services to visiting seafarers, is currently only open 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's in a context obviously of a port that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with large numbers of shipping visiting the port, and obviously seafarers on those ships who are requiring access to welfare services, and in particular the ability to contact their families while they're ashore and so on. A number of these seafarers are from overseas countries, and typically poorer, often Asian countries. It wouldn't be unusual to see, particularly in the winter months, seafarers huddled around our Littleton library using our council Wi-Fi in freezing conditions and driving rain in the dark. There have been a couple of examples in the last 2 years, one quite recently, of seafarers who have been killed. And that also demonstrates the clear need for welfare services and local services on shore in Littleton. So the Maritime Labour Convention has been ratified, signed up to by government. There are a number of clauses in the Maritime Labour Convention that are relevant to the matter that we're considering today. Regulation 4.4, that each member shall ensure that there are shore-based welfare services that are accessible, seafarers have access to adequate facilities and service, and that a technically competent person is employed at a welfare centre. In relation to who's responsible for providing welfare facilities, the Convention suggests that these should be provided by one or more of public authorities, ship owners or voluntary organisations. And in terms of funding, the Convention suggests that grants from public funds or levies on shipping or other dues from shipping would be appropriate forms of funding. So really the questions for us in Littleton, and questions that the Community Board wrestled with in dealing with this in its meeting, what seafarer welfare services should Littleton have, and in particular is what's provided currently appropriate, who's responsible for providing them, and we're fortunate to have volunteers and the Seafarers Centre there in Littleton, but realising that they're constrained because of the amount of volunteer labour that's available, and also constrained because of funding, and who should fund them. And the issue that was put in front of the Community Board was that an appropriate way of funding would be a levy on shipping. So essentially the employers of the people requiring the welfare services contributing to their onshore welfare. Now the port have made a small contribution, a $5,000 contribution to the operation of the welfare centre. I think it's fair to say that the Seafarers Centre would value the opportunity to further engage with the port to see whether a better funding regime that resulted in a greater level of funding could be achieved. And obviously this has come to us at council with some legal advice alongside around whether we've got a legal or a moral obligation. We obviously as council are not a signatory to the Maritime Labour Convention. I'd like to see us obviously take the advice from staff, but then in the context of that advice, look at what positive steps we could take to ensure better outcomes for our visiting seafarers to Littleton, looking at how we can support the Seafarers Centre to achieve their objectives in the context of the issues that we've heard about this morning.
So I've just emailed it to everyone that emailed it round before, and I'll just run through it until it can get up on the screen. So received the report and attached legal advice noting the provisions of the Maritime Labour Convention regarding seafarers' welfare centres. Note the challenges facing the Seafarers Centre regarding the resources required to provide these services and the constraints they face due to fundraising or shortfall in funding.
Yep.
Due to a shortfall in funding. Note the provisions of the Maritime Labour Convention which suggest methods of funding which include a levy on ships. Note that staff are continuing to discuss with the Seafarers Centre the options that may be available to them for seeking funding and grants. Request staff to meet with the Seafarers Centre and Littleton Port Company to explore a range of initiatives, including the possibility of a levy on shipping that could support the Seafarers Centre. In that way, we've noted everything that the Community Board considered. I don't really want to go back to a situation of resolving that we don't have any moral obligations. To me, it's not a question of morality. It's a question that the Seafarers Centre needs a resolution. The Port Company holds the key to one of the ones that is suggested under the Maritime Labour Convention, and you know, I mean, we can't direct the Port Company to do this. I took out the reference to central government, but we could talk to central government, because if this was simply required, if it was a matter of course, if every port in the country had to levy for the provision of these services, then it would be a no-brainer. Everyone would do it, and the resources would be, well, the cost would actually fall where they lie, and that is with the employers of these seafarers. Tim, Aaron, Anne.
Thank you. I totally agree. I think the moral obligation is with the employers, the shipping companies, and if there was some way in the future that we could allow the Littleton Port Company or any port in the country to be levied for their responsibility to these sailors, would be really good. But in the short term, you know, all community boards have a discretionary fund. Have you thought of using some of that in the short term for this?
Yes, it has been used.
Okay, it is being used. So is it something like dollar for dollar to the port company, or I'm not sure, because you've mentioned this figure before with regards to what was required or what was asked for.
$1,000 is required to run a sustainable service or a service. We gave them $5,000.
So I realise there's a pressure here, but we've got pressures right throughout the city with so many different communities and community boards. So if it goes in a funding queue and we are stretched for funds, I think that could be a very long wait, or a very disappointing one perhaps. I don't know, I'm just saying it's not going to be the be-all and end-all.
I think that we're looking at every possibility in terms of funding, not just council funding, and this is another way of seeing if it can be achieved.
Yep. Sorry, Aaron and Anne, Yanni.
So my question, Leanne, is to you around number 5. You said before that we can't get the Littleton Port Company to, or we can't instruct them to, but we own them. I would have...
No, CCHL was the 100% shareholder. We have a letter of expectations. We have to go through a process if we were to do that, but we can't do that right now. So just a conversation with the Littleton Port Company at this stage may resolve the situation. So I'd rather go down the first up track first.
But yeah, because I'd rather propose an amendment or a change to 5 that asks us to ask the Littleton Port Company, since they're the ones that make all the money out of the port, between them and the boats, that they pay the bill until such time that the levy comes in, and then watch how quickly the levy gets worked through.
Yeah, the Littleton Port Company have made enormous contributions to the Seafarers Centre, especially since the earthquake. I mean, you see that...
$5,000, I think was the figure we were told.
They've given more than that since the earthquakes.
To the seafarers, I don't know that they have.
The only figure I've got in front of me is the figure of $5,000, which was the grant from the port to the Seafarers Centre.
Yeah.
I mean, the port have been involved in conversations about the future of the centre, but my understanding is that the only financial contribution has been that $5,000 grant.
Right. I think the fisheries company is putting up the site for the centre to sit on.
Can we just make that, well, it says to explore a range of initiatives, including the possibility. This is just an exploration meeting, so I'd rather have a response from the port company before I go any stronger than that.
Okay, I'll be okay with that if we can put a timeline on that. We'd expect some feedback on that, because that conversation could take forever.
Well,
but if we could have even 2 or 3 months.
Yeah. Okay, why don't request the Deputy Mayor and staff to meet with the Seafarer Centre and Littleton Port Company and report back through the community board. So, I mean, it's...
by May or something?
I would imagine by the end of March. Yeah. You could have a meeting with the community board.
Within 2 months, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be, yeah, that would be a good start. Thank you.
Yeah, by the end of March. No, oh, yeah, well, okay, within 2 months, that's fine. Sorry, Anne.
Thank you. I'd like to support and endorse what Aaron's just said, because I think the port is a council-owned, well, you know, we have a large interest in it, and we do have an expectation that our organisations have a community focus. This place needs a champion, and I think that it just makes a lot of sense that it's the port that is that champion. And so it would be great if they could enter into some kind of sponsorship type arrangement where they are, just as they sponsor other community organisations in the area, where they could be a chief sponsor for this, which is much needed, and demonstrates our care for this community of people who are a long way from home, who are reliant on technology to connect with their families, and at the moment it's woefully inadequate. So I believe that we could really encourage a really strong champion type relationship from the port to the Seafarers organisation.
Yeah, well, that's why I put Andrew into the mix as well. So, Yanni?
Just to, I mean, I'm glad that you've put some governance support in there. I'm a little bit worried about the staff meeting with the Seafarer Centre and the Littleton Port, and I think we should be clear about governance to governance, management to management, and I would suggest that actually the Deputy Mayor should meet with the chair or the board of the port company representatives, because I concur with the point that my 2 other colleagues have made. You know, we've just been in the Maya Foundation, that the port's put heaps of money into that, significant money, and it does seem to me that there is an inherent responsibility, should be, on them to make a greater contribution. But appreciate you want to set up a process for that to happen. I just think we need to be talking to the board of the port, not just management, over our expectations. And I was going to ask staff when the letter of expectation and draft statement of intent are coming back to council for the port, because I think it should be quite soon, shouldn't it?
Be for the next financial year, so between now and June.
But I think it's like a 1st of March or deadline, isn't there? Normally, like, we've just had one for V-Base come through finance, so I just wondered if there was also another opportunity we should take through that process to stress the importance of funding these local welfare initiatives.
Yeah, I still think the ship owners shouldn't be let off the hook. My view. Dion?
Is there any way in this that we can look at sort of saying that we actually do agree with the voluntary what is it called? The Seafarers. Yeah, that's the one. I mean, because what we're saying here is nothing really.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I want us to support it. I mean, I lived on ships for quite a long time, and you know, I went around the world and around New Zealand, and there are a lot of places that have very good facilities for people that get off ships, and that's the first thing you want to do when you get off a ship. You don't have any Wi-Fi, you don't have internet, and you want to catch up with people on, you know, that your family, your loved ones and stuff like that. So I mean, we're saying nothing really. So I'd like to actually support it, if there was support around the table for it. It doesn't mean that we're going to be immediately doing something, but I think we should actually show some sort of moral obligation actually to support this, and actually say that we're a place that welcomes people that are on ships. We welcome people that come from the airport.
provision of, but not financially funding.
I mean, it is, these people are working, bringing economic benefits to the city through the trade that the port has. I just do not see a reason why we've got something in front of us that actually is looking at supporting those workers, and that we're actually not saying that we support it. We're just really saying nothing.
Yeah. I have to confess that until this paper came forward, I had never read the Maritime Labour Convention. Have you read it?
No.
No. So
I've looked into it since this report came to us, yes, now, but before that I hadn't.
But there's a link to it, and I've read it. And the thing is that it covers a whole range of things that we cannot be possibly responsible for because we are not the signatory.
But I'm not saying that,
if you want to take the section that deals with welfare centres and say that we support those provisions, then that fits very well. Receive the report and attach legal advice noting the provisions of the Maritime Labour Convention regarding seafarers, welfare centres. Number 2, we support, council supports, sorry, which I've lost the clause.
4 something, is it?
Title 4. 4.4. So we support the provision of access to shore-based welfare facilities as set out in the convention. And that covers all of the aspects of the welfare facilities, which is what you've referred to, and then carry on 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, at least we're now saying something.
Yep. Yep. All right. Was there anyone else? Aaron?
Yeah, I'm quite glad that we've seen this, and it just highlights in our community some trade practices that go on because of international laws, that you can come in and have people that are technically working in our country, even though they're employed under another nation's flag, but they are in our country. They're guests of ours in a way, and they're very welcome here and very welcome by the people of Littleton. It's been a trading port for well, I don't know, a century and a half, coming up to 2 centuries. It's an amazing place, and some of them are fantastic people, and well, most of them are fantastic people, to be honest, not some of them. I struggle with the fact that they can be paid so poorly, and that you can trade in our country for the luxury of a lot of the world being able to buy fish that's come from our part of the world, or us to be able to buy really cheap goods that we'll then dump in a landfill in a few weeks after we've opened them and played with them. But that's the nature of international trade. But that international trade is possible because some of the people here are paid less than $600 a month, and that doesn't allow them to catch a bus to McDonald's to use their Wi-Fi. They need to use it in Littleton. And so as a good international citizen, it's great that we do support this, and that we do have a solution in 6, or a way forward that will hopefully lead us to a solution to keep these guests of our city in a fair condition while they are here, and help them communicate with their families back home, because as Dion said, and he was probably not on less than $2 an hour working for the New Zealand Navy.
$19,600.
$19,600 and 3 good square meals. Luxury, Dion. But that's not the luxury that everyone that works on these boats have, and it's a sad situation for some of them. I know that some are away for months and months and don't see their children, and their only chance to see them is via Skype. So let's at least help offer them that luxury.
Right. So we haven't got a mover and a seconder for this resolution. So you spoke to something that wasn't moved or seconded, so moved and seconded. And so, and Yanni, did you want to speak to it?
No, that's fine.
Right, and Dion.
Can I second it?
No, it's been seconded, but...
Has it been seconded?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, right, that's fine. No, I'll just say, yeah, I'm happy that, and thank you for putting number 2 in there, because I do think that we should have some sort of moral obligation to actually help facilitate, the support for these people that do come in on the ships, because, as I said before, we've got an airport and we've got great facilities there for the air hostesses, the pilots and other stuff like that. When they get off a plane after they've been on there for maybe 12, 6 hours, 2 hours, there's great facilities for them to do that stuff, and we don't have those same sort of level of facilities for people that have been on a ship for 6 months potentially. Generally it's probably 2 or 3 weeks or something like that between port to port. So I do, as living on a ship myself, I think it's a good step forward, and I'm glad that it's been brought to our attention so that we can actually start getting some resolution towards it.
Andrew.
I think the approach that we've taken here is a good one. If we'd simply taken the staff recommendation that's in front of us, it wouldn't have seen us actively do anything. So I think the approach is right, that we deal with the port organisation first of all to see what they're able to do to better support the Seafarers Centre. Clearly we've got the letter of expectation statement of intent process as a way of engaging more formally with the port if we need to do that, and I think the 2-month time frame that we've got in our resolution here should allow that to happen within the time frame of the letter of expectation statement of intent process. So I'm pleased that we're not just taking the staff recommendation, that we're taking a more proactive approach about what we can do and what we can influence for a better outcome. What we're actually talking about here is the quality of welcome that we're offering to our seafaring visitors. And, those seafaring visitors are in an environment that, without the complications of maybe oppressive employment situations and other challenges, just being at sea is a dangerous and lonely business in itself. Being separated from your family for weeks, often months on end, in that hostile environment isn't easy for these people. So when they do have the opportunity to come ashore, it's important that we provide a good set of wraparound services and good support and good welfare to support people that inevitably have got needs when they're ashore and they're separated from their home country and their families. As a Lyttelton resident and someone who spent a number of years involved in businesses on the main street in Lyttelton, I've seen firsthand large numbers of seafarers often huddled outside our library in the wintertime in driving rain and freezing cold conditions, and all they're trying to do is to get a decent internet connection where they can actually see their children and their wives or partners on a Skype call. And I don't think that's the quality of welcome we should be offering to anybody, let alone people that are already working in a challenged environment. So I'd like to think the resolutions that we've got in front of us here, when they're implemented, will produce a good outcome for the Seafarers Centre. Once we report back in 2 months, the Community Board certainly have got a strong interest in this matter, hence the rather unusual Community Board recommendation in the beginning. I think we were just trying to look at a situation where there was something that we could do beyond saying we don't have any responsibility in this space. I think we should take what responsibility we can, at least as an influencer. And I don't doubt that if this first round of activity doesn't produce anything better, then we'll be wanting to look at other avenues we can take to get to a better outcome.
Yeah, very good. All right, I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. And I'll move back to the Banks Peninsula report. Moved by Andrew, seconded by Aaron. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Look, thank you very much, Pam.
We have one more.
Oh, we have. Yes, we've got to go back to the Allendale one. I ticked it off.
So my apologies. My previous meeting ran over time.
No, it's fine, Bruce. Yeah. Now, we just wanted to know how long the lease was for. It doesn't say in the paper.
Yep. So that is through to the 30th of June 2020 and aligns with the contracts for works for the road maintenance in that area.
So it's just for 3 years?
Yep.
Yeah.
And could we just tie the funding to that reserves committee for the 3 years, to the term of the lease?
Well, we'll just put for the term of the lease. Yep.
Is that
I mean,
okay?
well, we can't do it beyond the term of the lease.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
We're not going to lease it to anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, but if I'm hearing Councillor Johansson's question, there is some work referred to in the report about getting a policy. So you could do that, but we are also looking at doing a policy. So you may have the situation where you have this continuing over the term of the lease and a policy coming in with a different position in that time. That's acceptable, but you just need to understand there's a risk of that.
Yeah, I think for 3 years, I'd rather give the Reserve Committee some certainty of the funding for 3 years, and while we develop the policy, that would be my preference.
So can we put for the term of the lease? Because I mean, the disadvantage of writing 3 years is that it's 3 years from when? 3 years from when the lease is signed? I don't know. The term of the lease? Yeah. All right. So we've got a mover and a seconder for that. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. It's carried. Thank you. And thank you to the gentleman at the back too. Thank you. Right. Kim Money, Coastal Burwood Community Board. Good morning.
Community and staff, it's great to be here. And Happy New Year to all of you. Apparently it's all right to say it on the 1st of February still, so
yeah.
There you go.
I can just make up rules.
No, but you all look refreshed and had your vitamin D, so that's really good. I have here with me my Deputy Chair Tim Sintas come to join today, and also our Board Governance Manager Joe Wells. Great team. No parties, so straight into it. The New Brighton Beachside Playground. Well, absolutely, what can we say? Congratulations to you all. What a team effort. These photos, you can see, you know, the enjoyment that's being had there. I went down yesterday, I tried to do a little video for you to see and have some reactions from some of the people that are actually playing. I had 4 people, but my technology, I'm afraid, has failed. And I did promise these little children that they would be seen in front of the Mayor and the councillors today, and now I have to apologise to them. But we will send this little video to the IT and see if we can get it for you next time. But up here, sorry?
Yeah, no, do that. But bring it next time.
We will do that. But here we have some of the 3 of them that we did film, and you can see up there that one was from Rangiora,
Rangiora.
They were out of town, and someone else was from Harewood, and then there was someone else from Prebleton. So actually, out of the 4 people that interviewed, none of them were from New Brighton. So that was great news. But we had a brilliant day at the opening. We had hundreds of people there. Unfortunately, you guys had to work. We had the children, the parents, the residents, and those people that worked on the project. And you know, I have to say about the guys that worked on that project, they were pouring concrete at 2 o'clock in the morning. They were working virtually from 7 in the morning or 6 in the morning till 9 at night. People were throwing chocolates over the fence just to keep them going. They were just absolutely awesome. They were working 7 days a week, so to get that done in time. They were literally packed, the children and parents packed like sardines over the holidays. It's just been magic to watch the families enjoying playing together. There's still just a little bit of work to be finished off in the next few months, but I hope that you all have been down to check it out or even have a play on it, because I have to confess I've actually been on top of the waka. So come on, Leanne, up you get. So you can even do your wee Titanic version on the front of the...
Oh, God. You don't want to hear that.
But, you know, what a fantastic way for the council and DCL to kickstart regeneration of New Brighton. So again, congratulations. Following on from that, of course, or at the same time that all this has been going on, the hot saltwater pools, DCL have analysed the community feedback regarding the design and aspirations for the facility. The final concept designs will be coming out shortly in the beginning of this year. At the same time, the council have been working on that connectivity improvements between the New Brighton Pedestrian Mall and Marine Parade. So we're also going to be seeing the results of that consultation in February. Next we have Thompson Park. This is just a bit of a board project that we're consolidated a bit of funding from the annual plan. The entrance and the car park there is quite abysmal. It's virtually clay, nothing much else, a lot of potholes. It's a highly used park, so we've got a bit of concentration on that here, wanting to get some landscaping done. dust. It's just like a dust pit in the summer, and just the wind just swirls around. We've got I Love New Brighton there shortly, and it's always an issue. And also just things like there's no accessibility access from the car park to the playground. So, you know, difficult for prams but impossible for wheelchairs. So we're really pleased that we're working with staff on that to make some improvements. I do want to bring up midges this morning, simply because it has been in the public arena lately, in the media there. Staff are giving the board very regular updates. We are kept fully informed, and I have to say that the staff couldn't be working harder to resolve this, and are absolutely dedicated to eradicating these pests. There were good results up until the first week of January. Apparently there were no complaints recorded, which reflected what they were actually seeing on site and the monitoring that was being undertaken. Unfortunately, the midges did peak again in mid-January when we had that rainstorm, but this is a work in progress. But there are indications that it will improve as the midge management plan is progressed, and the board totally support this plan and all the work that the staff are doing. Another little correction on that the media wrote was that one of the ponds that they were draining to Sunbake was the one closest to the residents. It's not actually the one closest to the residents, the one closest to the plant. So we've even, you know, got probably better results once they are able to get to that second pond closer to the residents and drain and sunbake that. So good on staff, we really do appreciate everything that they're doing, and hoping for a really good result as that plan is implemented. What do we got here? The board had a meeting just prior to Christmas with the Ministry of Education regarding of all the school sites that were closed across our ward. There were 6 of them. One in particular that the community are interested in is the New Brighton school site regarding the Roy Stokes Hall. We're just working with these groups. They are keen to put a proposal together. The Ministry have already granted the community an extension to the end of February. We are actually hearing from this community at the board meeting on Monday, and staff have already indicated to the community that there is no budget for council to purchase the hall, but should they require on Monday some more time to prepare a suitable proposal to take over the ownership and management of the Roy Stokes Hall, etc. on that site, and given that time is of the essence, the board would like to request council support to request a further extension from the Ministry of Education.
Very good.
We had a resolution that possibly could have been...
Yeah, no, the resolution forward will come up after your presentation.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yep.
Sure. Just the South Brighton Estuary Edge we've got up here. This is just pictures of the result of the January flood. We've shown you pictures before, but these pictures show further destruction to the environment. There's been some more trees falling over, as you can see. There's others that are in danger of falling over. We've had vegetation and more track loss and more land loss. And as I've said before in the past, this is consequence of the Reno mattresses on the estuary edge that were damaged in the earthquake that used to provide protection but don't now. But they just need to be fixed and maintained. So the community is united to see this edge repaired, and we are quite determined to work with staff to develop a process to implement a repair, because this is one of the biggest issues for our board at present. So some really good things happening. We've got the camping ground there. We had the South New Brighton camping ground following on from the other one. Those pictures that you saw before happened to be right in front of the camping ground there, but we had the privilege of opening this new refurbished kitchen ablution block, which was just marvellous, a beautiful day. The owners have absolutely transformed the campsite and created a real oasis for families to enjoy, so good on them. But you can, unfortunately, they had flooding from the estuary during that January storm, and so hence the urgency for the remediation there. So now on to the church. So we had another opening of the New Brighton Union Parish last weekend, which was exciting, a very special and exciting celebration, and what a journey that they've had to be on for the past 7 years to rebuild this. This is another well-loved community gathering place returned to New Brighton, so there they are, so check that out sometime if you're in the area. Yep, there's Glenn, looking pretty smart there, Glenn. So here's Kite Day. I hope some of you got down there, because look at those crowds, it was absolutely stunning. The sky was filled with colourful kites of all shapes and sizes, and the beach was filled with children and families having fun. So thank you for supporting that, but it was absolutely jam-packed. Yeah, huge crowd. car parking, I live in North New Brighton. Well, I drove down thinking, yeah, I'll get a park, but no, I drove all the way home, parked and walked all the way down. Should have done that in the first place. Upcoming events, we have I Love New Brighton, always held on Waitangi Day. Staff do an amazing job of putting this together with the local community groups, and it's held at Thompson Park. Celebrates everything that community love about New Brighton. So there'll be all sorts of free activities for kids and of all ages. Have a go, sports, market stalls, food, bouncy castles. You know, the free sausages, which is the queue is for miles. I've done that stall myself, and it's actually really fun. So that's I Love New Brighton, Waitangi Day. If you've got nothing to do, come to the beach. Then we have the Kathmandu Coast to Coast on the 9th to 10th of February. So come down and cheer Glenn across the finish line.
And Mike. And Mike.
Oh, Mike, good for you. Okay, we've got two of you there then.
You might have to be there earlier for Mike, though.
No. I'll say no more. But there is such a buzz along the roads, and especially at the last stretch along Marine Parade as they're heading towards the finish line at the amphitheatre at the pier. So I was going to say go hard and go home Glenn, but it has to be go hard and go home Mike as well. So expect to see you both on the podium.
And football and my 79-year-old dad.
Oh, awesome. Well done. Okay. And finally, we have the Parklands at Play event, which
You
is
should be
also...
there earlier for him as well.
You're so funny.
Sorry.
You're forgiven. So here we have the Parklands at Play 2018. Very unruly lot, you lot, this morning. First one of the year. Sunday the 18th of February at 12 o'clock, Parklands Reserve, Queen's Park. Again, the event is for families, and it has have a go sports and with the local clubs. Really great way of the clubs to get out there and show what they do around the area. Wacky fun with the pedal mania, mega slides and all sorts, Zumba, so that's worth a go. And preschooler activities, all sorts of things like that. And it also says here on my notes that it's a relaxed atmosphere with sounds to soothe and a selection of food. So that sounds wonderful as well. So it's going to be a great start to the year. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we've got the resolutions, which is receiving the report and supporting the extension of time. So I'm assuming that that's a David and a Glenn move in second. Sorry, Glenn, I withdraw and apologise.
No.
Are there any questions for Kim? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you for what is a very comprehensive report. So thank you.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Yeah. Now the Hallsville Hornby Riccarton Community Board report. Oh, what about, have I got that right?
Thanks, Leanne and councillors, and a happy new year to you all.
Oh, I see.
Thanks for the opportunity to tell you what's happening in our lovely little part of Christchurch. I better put my spectacles on actually. Now, we don't have any Part A's, Leanne and councillors. But we've, sorry? Oh, you want me to talk to that?
No, just introduce where it is, Mike.
Introduce? Riccarton House? Absolutely, everybody knows where Riccarton House is. And, sorry? No, it's in Riccarton. And when we come to the end of our report and in our helpful hyper, what did we call it, Gary?
Our hyper helpful random fact.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll be enlightening you a bit more on that lovely piece of Riccarton. So anyway, back to our report. The Denton Park reclassification is out for consultation, and there seems to be quite a lot of public interest in that at this point in time. And Night Stream Playground, are we on to that? Where are we? Yeah, we are there. That's not Night Stream Playground, I must say. That is not Night Stream Playground, is it? It is Night Stream Playground. It's not Neil Graham Park. So now that's a lovely facility, and we just can't wait until the fences come down and it can be officially opened, because it's been constructed for quite some time, and families and children are absolutely loving it, but it's still behind fences. So we just Mr. Watson was making some inquiries this morning to see when we can actually have that officially launched. So we're looking forward to that. And the next one is the Templeton quarrying issues. And as their report says, we had a meeting at St Saviour's Church with more than 200 people. Last Monday was a subsequent meeting at the Templeton Community Centre with in excess of 500 people at that meeting. So they're really, really proactively making the community aware of this proposal by Fulton Hogan to actually open a massive quarry just on the boundary of Selwyn District Council. So we're up to our eyeballs in that one, councillors, and it's just over the boundary. So the effects of this quarry are very, very much within our ward and within the city of Christchurch, but the activity itself is just across the road in Selwyn. So and there hasn't been a resource consent applied for yet. So that's why I'm commending the Templeton Residents Association for being proactive in being involved in communicating with Fulton Hogan prior to them actually lodging the application. It's a lot better for everybody to be proactive in these situations rather than reactive. So moving on then to the Iranian community Yalda night celebrations, and it's just lovely to see these things happening in our community, multicultural community. We've got a lot to learn from each other as far as culture and practice is concerned, and it's just really, really great to see. And we can help support these multicultural events. It's just so pleasing, and it's good for everybody, not only that community, but for everybody else as well. Christmas dinner at the that was a brilliant event. I see in our report it mentions it's for the elder community. I didn't actually think it was for the elder community, but most of them were there. I was there, and I really, really enjoyed it. But it's such a wonderful community, that Rickett and West community, and one of the best things that happened, of course, was when we had the community policing team move into that area and bring that community together. And the residents' associations in that community are really, 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 really well organised. Their community garden, virtually all the food that was vegetables and all of that stuff at that dinner was produced by the community garden. And one of the gentlemen, Nick Tipar, he goes out and does a lot of white baiting during the white bait season as well, and shares that around the community as well. So it's a really, 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 really lovely community, and so pleased that we could help support that as well. Hornby Hoops. Yes, I was there with the throwing a few balls and with the community. That's at the Branston. Used to be the Branston Intermediate site, which is now the site of the new South Hornby schools transferred to that site. But there's an area there that's used as a youth hangout, drop-in area, and that was a really, really lovely event, and it was good to see those the Canterbury Rams come along and be so free with their time and to support these young people in that activity. we're very, very privileged to have that. Yeah, and of course we've got the Olympia gymnastics in our ward as well at the Wigram, the Wigram Air Base Gymnasium has been taken over now by, well, it was given to Christchurch, and it's the Olympia Gymnastics are operating out of there. So that's a lovely facility, and they're expanding their activities to different forms of gymnastics.
It's probably important to say that this is the first parkour organised group in Christchurch.
Yes.
And if you've ever seen parkour, they're running up the wall and running across the roof and doing things that probably shouldn't be able to do, but they do.
Correct.
So,
correct. We only thought that marsupials and possums and things like that could do.
It's pretty impressive.
But it's absolutely wonderful. Now moving on to
university.
Oh, the university. Yeah, we had a meeting yesterday. Thanks, Gary, with the Vice Chancellor Rod Carr at the university. We were with our Harewood, Fennelton, Waimari Community Board and our Community Board. We were undertaking a parking review around the university, and we had the opportunity. We were invited by Dr. Carr to have a meeting with them yesterday, and we were I was absolutely blown away with the changes and what's happening at the university over the next 12 months is going to be absolutely massive. Absolutely massive. So they're shifting the whole College of Education, you know, the old Teachers College, to the opposite side of the campus completely. So there's going to be some massive changes. A lot more on-site student residential units are going in there, and it was really, really helpful, wasn't it, Gary? Really, really helpful. So that was really good.
I think in terms of the parking review, it gave some really good, honest information about how full those car parks are, and there's a perception that they're not full, but because of construction and because of other things, they are at a maximum. And the student parks for $400 a year.
That's and I pointed it out that for a student to park for a month is about the same price as a 24 pack of stubbies. so when people think that the car parking at the uni is very, very expensive, I was really surprised to find out that it is $400 for a year for on-site car parks there. So it's probably not as bad as we think led to believe. Now this month's hyper helpful random facts is Riccarton House, and Riccarton House was the first house in Christchurch to have electricity. So did you know that? First house, and it also had an intercom so that the residents of the house could talk to the servants and say, "Could you bring me up a cup of tea this morning, please?" So that was another fact is, and it's probably not well known, that when the Dean's family were coming, when the Dean's brothers were coming from Wellington across Cook Strait, they had a barrel of nails. Now there was a storm, and during the storm, as they were crossing the Cook Strait, they lost their barrel of nails. So when they got to Riccarton and started to build Dean's Cottage, they had to make their own nails out of pieces of timber. So they made their nails like oversized toothpicks, and that was what was used to actually hold together the first Dean's Cottage, which is still on site, and it's the oldest. It's the oldest. Well, it was the first house built on the Canterbury Plains. So that's a bit more useless information. And the other thing that amazes a lot of people was when Jane Deans decided to migrate from Scotland. She was packing her bags, and what do you think she thought she should take? Rolls of wallpaper. Now, what a funny thing for a lady to put in a bag when they're coming out from to build a new life in Rickett and in Christchurch was, oh, I better fill up my cabin trunk with wallpaper, and that wallpaper is still on the walls at Rickett House, and we've had it replicated so that we've got new rolls of that identical wallpaper. So that's another bit of useless information on it. No, it's not useless. It's a hyper helpful random fact.
Thank you very much. So I think Jimmy would like to move this report. Anne, would you like to second the report? Yes. Are there any questions? No. I'll put the.
Sorry, I got
my comments for the 10% inquiry one.
We've gone well over the 10 minutes. I'm sorry.
Quickly.
We've gone over the 10 minutes, well and truly. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry too.
Yeah.
Taken so long.
No, that's okay.
I just did want to mention that we've got 2 new schools as well as the Seven Oaks school that's going to be opening up. There's 2 more new schools on stream, so we need to be aware of that as far as safety issues and all of that stuff. In the next 12 months, we've got 2 new schools opening in Allsville as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Sorry if I've taken you over time.
No, that's all right. I'm being reasonably relaxed at the beginning of the year, but we've got 3 more boards to get through, and I had hoped that we could get through them and then have a cup of coffee, but we may have to stop and have a cup of coffee. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
There's no questions in?
No, I'll pop the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you. So, well, the next one is Fendleton, Waimari, Harewood Community Board. I don't think you're going to be very long, are you? Sorry, Aaron. So, Aaron Campbell, I don't know if you were presented to the Community Board before.
I was here last year.
You did present before, so well, yeah. I won't make a special welcome then.
No,
but welcome.
Not necessarily. Yeah.
Very nice tie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. David Cartwright can't be here, unfortunately, so his apologies. And also thank you for Gary for stepping in for Matt, who was on annual leave. Well deserved, by the way. Happy to take the report as read. I'd just like to make a couple of highlights to it. The Recess Committee met on the 15th of January. And approved the granting of the lease to operate the boat hire at the Groins Recreation Lake. It'll be on a rolling month-by-month basis, and that will be until a new head lease can be signed between ECAN and the CCC. Mr Hanrahan has now been open for at least a couple of weekends now. It's great to see the signs out advertising the boat hire. And I'm very optimistic that in the future, the public and groups and holiday programs will return that may have missed out prior to Christmas, and they'll be utilising the facility. The traffic issues, just as Mike said there, we did get a memo from staff regarding the consultation around the university parking plan in the first area that was done. The other part regarding traffic issues would be the Glandovi Idris Straven Road Residents Association. So in late November, a community presentation brought residents, the board and staff together to improve the understanding and communication on all sides of the issue. The primary focus of that is the intersection at Glandovi Idris Straven and the upgrade from a roundabout to a traffic light controlled intersection. We appreciate the large amount of time that staff spent on this, and I was particularly pleased to learn of the number of accidents involving vulnerable road users following the upgrade to a traffic light system has dropped considerably. So the safety at the intersections significantly improved. Under Part 6, there's significant projects and initiatives. Just a correction there, under that it's got 5.1 where it should be 6.1 and 6.2, for example. Just highlighting Jelly Park repair work has started. That was in December. That will be progressing for quite a substantial amount of time, but in a rolling basis, so the facility will be open for the public use as much as it possibly can. The bike initiative is progressing. It's probably halfway through its full summer pool season run, so it'll be great to see those results come back later in the year. I think Ali will speak to the pool day there that we hold jointly with Papua New Guinea. Apart from that, happy to take questions.
Fine. Vicky?
I see Newsline has a story up about the completion of the Mona Vale Gatehouse, but the first question, if I put it up on Facebook, is going to be what's it now being used for, and that was going to be decided by your community board after we were looking at artist in residence.
Yes.
Can you tell me what it is being used for?
Yes, so regarding the Mona Vale Gatehouse, the board and staff worked on an artist in residence program. There were discussions on other uses, but very happy to have the artist in residence program there. So there's a team of 3 internationally renowned animators that will be living at the Gatehouse while working on the latest project that's being produced at the Ferrymead area. So the CCC's community arts team will liaise with the production team regarding community outreach during this stay. So hopefully that will inspire the development of more local talent in that area.
So there's going to be 3 animators?
Yes.
Awesome. So that's going to be part of the whole artist in residence program. Brilliant. When did they move in?
I'm not sure. Can I throw that up to Aaron?
Yeah, week before Christmas. Well, a couple of weeks before Christmas. The studio opened in Ferrymead. Councillor Turner did the opening, and on behalf of the council were invited. And that's one of the reasons the studio was able to open in Christchurch, was that we were able to support them and with the artists in residence, which made the difference between Christchurch and Auckland. So it was a tipping point, and a great one, because Ant Elworthy, who's the lead animator on that project, is the lead animator on most of Tim Burton's work, and so he is one of the best in the world. So if you look him up, Ant Elworthy, on IMDb, you'll see, and he's got a film coming out soon called Isle of Dogs, directed by Wes Anderson. And
has the story been on Newsline or anything like that?
I'm not sure. We got an update in our board.
Yes, I know, but this is such a fantastic addition to the story.
It is, and the animators are going to work with local students in that they're going to do a couple of outreach programs and show them how a kid growing up in Linwood can go on to be one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So, and that's the amazing story.
Yeah, it does need another story. Well done. That's really good news.
So just in regard to that, a big thanks to the heritage teams that done the restoration of the gatehouse there, the leasing teams that were involved and that came in and spoke to the board, community arts team. I'm sure there's lots of other teams in council that have dealt with it, but apologies for not naming them, but those in particular.
Yeah, no, that's a great outcome. Fantastic. Good question. Yeah. All right, so you'd like to move this one, Aaron? Receipt of this report. Then Jamie. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you very much, Aaron. Papa Nui Yanis. Ellie Jones.
I'm coming. Yeah, I'm good. Hi, we'll keep it snappy. I haven't looked at this right through. It's just going to flick through. Is it on a timer, or will you do it, Christine? I can do it. Thank you very much. It's my lovely assistant, Christine. That's us. We don't need to see that. No, move on. Okay, so McFarlane Park. This is the next stage in the changeover from the St Albans Transitional Community Centre project, if you like. So the transitional centre is moving into McFarlane Park, and that will be a fantastic facility for the people living in that area, totally unrelated to the Shirley Community Centre. They are completely different projects for different communities. So that's very exciting, and the Lions are here in March, so that'll be very cool. This is a huge thing in our community at the moment with the St Albans Park and Pavilion upgrade. Interestingly, the press reported a $2.3 million budget on that. I believe it's really 1.2, 1.3, but I'm just getting those figures checked. Hey? Oh yeah. Well, the figures I've got and the board's been given are around 1.2 total, but that's going to be absolutely fantastic. And I have to say that the staff have been phenomenal in keeping the community informed about what's going on, and those storyboard picturey things on the fence are fabulous. And also liaising directly with residents who are right by the park. That's been really good as well. So can't wait for that to happen and get underway and be open. The edible awards, the applications for those close on the 2nd of March. I think Mike's entered again this year. You haven't this year? What, are you scared? Were you put off last year? You didn't want to threaten me, right? Okay, my tomatoes are awesome this year, so I think I'll be taking that one out. We've got 35 people in the awards this year, down from around 45 last year, which was a record, but that's because a lot of the older entrants are just not entering anymore. So we're encouraging youngies through schools and through local groups. So that's still a great thing that we do in the ward. We love it. The Jelly Park Pool Party, again, this is a fantastic project that we do, and we do this one with Fendleton, Waimari and Harewood. Staff put a huge amount of time and effort into that, and this year we had more than 200 youths involved in that, on 260 local youths involved in that on the 8th of December, so fantastic. Children's Day, check that out that's city-wide, and that's on Red Zone land, and it's always a fantastic family celebration on Sunday the 4th of March. Again, all of the boards working together on that. It is across the city, isn't it? Yeah.
And the Burwood Coastal Ward.
Beg your pardon? Oh, you just heckling, Dave, just shut. So the CNC is continuing as well. This is just part of our keeping an eye on things as far as stress and pressure on residents and businesses are concerned. This is a big project in our ward, and it's going to have some pretty significant impacts for residents and for traffic in the area. CNC have been fantastic. Their comms and engagement is wonderful, their fly-throughs, everything, so that's been fantastic as well. A bit more on that. That's more again. Abandoned houses, this is an issue that we believe might be a problem across the city. I know we've heard about the Central City project on this. These are a couple in Westminster Street, and that house has just appeared, the one on the right there, which used to be the old Cohen's weight loss building, in case anyone is interested. Don't ask me how I know that. And there's a bit of a mess here, the pavement's damaged, so it's not just about the site for these places, it's the periphery as well. And the problem that we're having with these in the ward at the moment, there aren't a huge number. This is another one on the corner of Papanui Road and Innes Road. This is on our side of Papanui Road in our ward. I believe that one has been abandoned since virtually the day after the 2011 earthquake. And the problem is that unless the building or the site is a health and safety risk or is a fire risk, there is very little we can do. And I'm wondering if, and the board would like to know whether we can have some initial advice from staff, and perhaps it can go to regulations and consents with regards to what we can do as a city council. Our measure seems to be very high. The bar is high when it comes to deciding whether a site or a building is a fire risk. You know, it can look really like it might just self-combust, and yet it doesn't seem to meet the measure. So if we could just get some advice and information on that, and what are our powers limited to? Is there anything we can do that could extend that so we can start getting rid of some of these eyesores and dangers really in our... It's part of our recovery not to be looking at this stuff every day. And I think that's, street damage, this is another part of the recovery as well, and I know the pressures that the council is under and the issues around standards of repair, but you know, this is just unacceptable, and it's not on any plan to repair soon these particular streets. One of them is around Rugby Park, but I think that's pretty awful for people having to be walking dogs and walking along and driving past. So we just want some emphasis and effort put on the repairs of our pavements and roads, please, in the ward. And it worsens after rain, we know that, but it's being exacerbated as well. That's it.
Very good. So,
so just if I could note the issue about the advice from staff on the abandoned houses, and that's all.
Yep. Do you want to just put a note there, just so to note that staff will provide advice on abandoned properties, because it's not just the houses, it's the fire risk. And fire health and safety and fire risk in terms of
and we've also had a number of staff changes in our community board governance team in the last wee while, and I just want to acknowledge the work that Christina's doing at the moment. She's hit the ground running and come in and is just fantastic at keeping all of us in the loop and juggling a whole lot of balls at once. So thank you, Christine.
No, that's not quite right. it's not just the community board. I thought we were going to go through regulatory
regs and consents.
Regulatory performance. Yeah. So staff will provide advice to the regulatory performance committee on all of the it's on all of the risks around abandoned properties, because it's not just health and safety and fire risks, it's actually just living in an environment that's amenity was the word I was looking for. Thank you.
And it's empty sites as well, Leanne. So
on all that. Hang on, and empty sections. Yeah.
Can I just point out that not all of the houses are like abandoned. Makes it seem like people have just sort of dropped and left and don't care. But many of these will be sort of under discussion still, insurance issues. They're not abandoned, they're just not able to go back. There might be a desire to. So just that the word abandoned itself sort of implies a lack of care. So it might be vacant and earthquake damaged or something rather than.
I know, but we're only talking about when the council would take regulatory action.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about people that haven't settled their insurance. And
but through you, Leanne, can a part of this work be actually, because I agree with Sarah that we need to know why these buildings are like this. That's got to be part of informing how we can manage them, because you do not want to dump.
Can we just get the initial advice on what the current rules are and how they're applied, and whether there are any changes to the regulatory framework? We've got a process in place around the CBD.
Yeah.
We would need to design a completely different approach for residential, and it does require a very careful and considered approach, because some people are pretty embarrassed about
can we
the state.
say abandoned/vacant, so it just covers it?
Yep.
Because I do understand what Sarah's saying.
Around abandoned/vacant.
Thank you.
Properties and empty sections. Yeah.
Did the work with the barriers address this?
No, that's CBD.
No, but it also went further than just the CBD, the way that they wrote it.
That's the advice we're looking for, I think.
Yeah. We wanted to kick off with just getting advice, and I wanted it noted for the council on an agenda. That's all. So, well, perhaps you could add to the thing and relevant bylaws, because that way because if regulatory performance are going to come up with some. If they're going to consider the advice, then it may well be that they can then start to give some direction about where we go with this. Do we?
Question.
Yeah, Glenn.
Oh, thank you. Just wonder whether the housing subcommittee could also receive that. It's still a live issue.
Just get rid of it. Get rid of it. We're not going to note anything in the minute. I mean, it's just. I don't want to turn this into a multiple layer things. It is around the regulations. It's around bylaws.
Let's keep it simple. Just keep it simple.
No, I was only asking for.
It's just to get. Well, it can be circulated to everyone.
Yeah, okay.
But I just want somebody to look at what the current rules and regulations are, and then try and look at what we need to do next. It's a perfectly valid thing that the community board have brought up. I want a solution.
Yeah.
I was going to ask whether that resolution or gives the width of that committee being able to look at things like ordering councils and regeneration plans, because we've been through this numerous times as a city and the advice has always been consistent, so that we can't do things through district plan and bylaws. So I guess, I mean, I really welcome us looking at this. I just didn't want to limit it to.
Do you know what you do know what all the rules are? I don't know what all the rules are, and I don't know the standard that triggers action. And I couldn't tell you, hand on heart, the sequence of events that staff have to go through to order compliance or compel compliance. So I don't know what that is. So let's just get a piece of advice written down, referred to the relevant committee, and then take it from there. It's just on the agenda now. Mike? Well, I was going to let Pauline second as the other council member. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried.
Thank you.
Oh, sometimes I regret things I start. Carolyn, would you like to present your report, and then we will close the meeting and have a cup of tea.
And we're going to be very short to compensate. Kia ora, everyone. This is the only picture we've got, and we got it this morning because this is the stationer's paper plus at Barrington, who has volunteered his window on several occasions to help the community board in its activities. And this is the Edible Gardens, same as what Ali was talking about, the Edible Gardens Awards that are due for judging this month. And he put this great display up, and there's tomatoes draped down the side and things. And so, cooperation with the council, which is almost unprecedented. We've got several parties. Most of them are without controversy, I would think. The one that's caused the most angst probably is Rapaki and Vernon. Every black fern and her dog and the rest of the world goes up Rapaki track at least once in their lifetime and treks up. And the locals are fed up with not being able to get out of their houses or get down the street. It's taken a very long time, and I'd like to thank the traffic engineers, particularly John Dorr, for the patience with which they've gone through this, because Rapaki Road was raised a couple of years ago, but it's been difficult to sort because it has a flow-on effect to the other terraces on the Port Hills, who believe that once Rapaki is sorted, the other terraces will be overparked as well. So it's been quite a stressful issue. The other thing that we got from it was that half of Rapaki Road is in Linwood Central, Heathcote, and we had to have a joint meeting. This must test the patience of staff. We had to have a joint meeting to decide one side of the road and the other side of the road, and staff even tried to get it sorted at one time, but we didn't get a caucus in one party didn't provide a caucus, so they had to, in the end, have two meetings on it. But we're going to have that. We're going to have that issue again with Dyers Pass Road, which is being decided by the two boards. I just want to mention one more thing. We're organising in our ward a licensing briefing, alcohol licensing briefing for residents and community groups in February, and in March we're organising a discussion around the district plan. We'd like to have an informed community on these two issues, and but we were beaten to one of those issues by the Spraydon Network, which is a residents' association in Spraydon, who had a meeting of their own the other day on alcohol licensing, and they invited the health board and community law in to explain the issues, and good on them. And I attended the meeting, and it was extremely interesting. I have asked for additional information on the licensing laws to also provide factual evidence to support proposals that are opposed to extra alcohol licensing in an area on the grounds that the number of licences does affect the community in terms of damage to the community with the additional numbers that can provide alcohol. Apparently the evidence is mixed, but does fall on the side of the numbers of alcohol dispensers having an effect on the community. Personally, I believe that alcohol should be subject to a change in attitude, as smoking was, where over the consequences of drinking too much alcohol becomes unacceptable to the community, just as smoking has become unacceptable to the community. And I don't believe we're anywhere near that yet. That's it, apart from the parties.
Very good. So I presume that this is a Tim and a Phil mover and seconder. Are there any questions? So move Tim, seconded Phil. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. That's carried.
Thank you.
On that note, I declare the shortest meeting that I've ever conducted closed. And have you switched off the